The silver ships appeared in Earth's sky on a Tuesday morning, their hulls shining like polished mirrors against the blue atmosphere. Commander Jiwoo Park gripped the rail of the orbital defense platform as she watched humanity's first contact. With alien life unfold before her eyes, the vessels moved with impossible grace, gliding through the air without any visible means of propulsion. They were nothing like the brutal warships Earth's military had imagined in their countless preparation scenarios. Dachu had spent 15 years in the Earth Defense Force, working her way up from a junior officer to commander of the most advanced orbital station humanity had ever built. She had trained for this moment, studied every possible scenario, prepared for invasion, for trade, for diplomacy, but nothing had prepared her for the sheer beauty of the alien craft. Each ship looked like it had been carved from a single piece of liquid starlight, surfaces rippling and flowing as they moved through the atmosphere. The first transmission came at exactly 10:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The voice that spoke was warm, musical, speaking perfect English with an accent that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "People of Earth," the voice said, "we come in peace. We are the Catherians, and we have traveled far to meet you." Down on the planet's surface, Dr. Hijin Kim was in her laboratory at the Seoul Institute of Xenobiology when the announcement came. She had dedicated her life to the theoretical study of alien life, never truly believing she would encounter it in her lifetime. Now, as she watched the news feeds showing the graceful ships hovering over major cities around the world, her hands trembled with excitement and fear. The Catherians requested a meeting with Earth's leaders, and within hours, emergency sessions were being called in every major capital. The aliens chose to land their primary vessel in neutral Switzerland, settling their ship in a field outside Geneva with such gentle precision that not a single blade of grass was disturbed. When the first Catherian emerged from their ship, the world held its breath. They were tall, standing nearly 8 feet in height, with long, elegant limbs and skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Their faces were angular but beautiful, with large eyes that held depths of ancient wisdom. They moved with a fluid grace that made every gesture seem like a dance. Dr. Kim was among the first scientists selected to make contact. She approached the landing site. Escorted by a team of diplomats and military personnel, she felt as if she were walking into a dream. The Catherians waited patiently, their expressions serene and welcoming. When she finally stood before them, one of the aliens stepped forward and spoke directly to her. "Dr. Kim," the being said, somehow knowing her name, "we have observed your work from afar. Your theories about silicon-based life forms show remarkable insight." The voice was like music, each word carefully chosen and beautifully pronounced. "We hope to learn much from each other." The Catherians explained that they came from a distant star system, part of a great confederation of worlds that had achieved peace and prosperity through cooperation and shared knowledge. They had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting for humanity to reach a level of development where contact would be beneficial rather than harmful. "We offer you gifts," their leader, who introduced himself as Veltar, explained to the assembled world leaders. "Medical knowledge that can cure your diseases, energy technologies that will end your dependence on fossil fuels, and eventually the stars themselves. We ask for nothing in return except friendship and the opportunity to learn from your unique perspective." To prove their good intentions, the Catherians demonstrated their technology. They healed a paralyzed volunteer with a device no larger than a smartphone, making the man walk again in minutes. They showed how their energy systems could power entire cities without any harmful emissions. They spoke of faster-than-light travel, of worlds beyond imagination, of a future where humanity could take its place among the stars. Dr. Kim found herself working closely with the Catherian scientists, learning about their advanced biology and sharing her own research. They were patient teachers, never condescending, always encouraging. They seemed genuinely fascinated by human creativity and ingenuity, often asking her to explain concepts that seemed simple to her, but apparently amazed them. Commander Park watched all of this from her orbital station, maintaining her vigilance even as the world below celebrated. Something about the situation made her uneasy, though she couldn't put her finger on what. The Catherians were perfect guests, polite, helpful, and generous. Perhaps that was what bothered her. In her experience, nothing was ever that simple. But as the days passed and the Catharians continued to share their gifts freely, even Park began to relax. Medical centers around the world reported miraculous cures. Power grids became more efficient overnight. The aliens spoke of building spaceships that would carry humans to other worlds, of a future of unlimited possibilities. The world began to change. And for the first time in human history, it seemed like change might actually be for the better. The Catharians had come bearing kindness. Humanity was ready to embrace the gift of the stars. 15 years had passed since the Catharians first arrived, and Earth had become a world that previous generations could never have imagined. Dr. Minho Lee stood in his laboratory, looking at his reflection in the polished metal surface of a Catharian medical scanner. At 73 years old, he appeared no older than 35, his hair still thick and black, his skin smooth and unmarked by time. The alien medicine had not only cured his arthritis and failing eyesight, but had somehow rolled back the years themselves. Minho had been one of the first human scientists to work directly with the Catharians, learning their advanced medical techniques and helping to adapt them for human use. His colleague, Dr. So-Young Choi, worked at the station beside him. Her own appearance, equally youthful, despite being in her 60s. Together, they had overseen the transformation of human medicine from primitive surgery and chemical treatments to elegant biological healing that worked at the cellular level. The cancer rates have dropped to 0% again this month, So-Young reported, reading from her datapad. The regeneration treatments are showing remarkable success. The paralyzed patients from the Seoul hospital are all walking again. Minho nodded, though something in his expression remained troubled. The results were incredible, beyond anything they had dreamed possible. Yet sometimes, late at night in his private moments, he wondered about the long-term effects. The Catharians assured them that all treatments were safe. But human science still couldn't fully understand how the alien medicine worked. Outside the laboratory windows, the city of New Seoul stretched toward the horizon, its buildings reaching impossible heights thanks to Catharian construction techniques. The fusion reactors that the aliens had helped them build provided clean, unlimited energy. Flying vehicles moved between the towers, their anti-gravity systems humming quietly. The air was cleaner than it had been in over a century, and the streets were filled with people who looked healthy and young. Children played in parks, where holographic displays taught them about distant worlds and alien cultures. The education system now included Catharian philosophy alongside traditional human subjects. Young people learned about the importance of harmony, of working together for the greater good, of placing the needs of the collective above individual desires. It was beautiful, peaceful, and somehow unsettling. Admiral Park, formerly Commander Park, walked through the corridors of the New Earth Defense Headquarters. Her promotion had come with the expansion of humanity's presence in space. The Catharians had helped them build orbital stations, lunar colonies, and even a small outpost on Mars. Humanity was finally reaching for the stars, just as the aliens had promised, but Park's job had become more complex than simple defense. She now oversaw the integration of human and Catharian technologies, managed the joint space programs, and maintained security for the growing number of alien enclaves on Earth. The Catharians lived in beautiful dome-shaped cities that they had built in carefully selected locations around the world. Humans were welcome to visit, but the inner areas remained off-limits, designated as private spaces for the aliens to maintain their own culture. Park had requested detailed information about these enclaves many times, but the Catharians politely declined to share specifics. They explained that some aspects of their technology were too dangerous for humans to handle, that they needed spaces where they could practice their own customs without interference. It was reasonable, but it made Park's security job more difficult. During a routine briefing, Park reviewed the latest reports from her intelligence teams. Most of the information was routine trade agreements, scientific collaborations, cultural exchanges, but buried in the technical reports were small inconsistencies. That had been bothering her for months. The Catharians claimed to come from a star system called Velanor, located roughly 40 light-years from Earth. They had described their homeworld as a paradise of crystal cities and floating gardens. But when human astronomers tried to observe the system, they found nothing but empty space. The Catherians explained that their advanced technology could hide their worlds from primitive telescopes. But the explanation felt incomplete. There were other small details that didn't quite fit. The Catherians spoke of their galactic confederation, describing dozens of member worlds and species. But when pressed for specific information about these other civilizations, they became vague, offering only general descriptions that could apply to almost any advanced society. Park had also noticed that despite 15 years of close contact, no human had ever seen a young Catherian. All of the aliens appeared to be adults, and when asked about their children or families, they would smile and change the subject. They claimed to have very long lifespans, but even immortal beings should have some variation in age. The most troubling discovery had come from the medical teams. While studying Catherian biology to better understand their healing techniques, Dr. Lee's team had found unusual genetic markers that seemed to suggest the aliens were not entirely one species. The DNA samples showed traces of multiple biological origins, as if the Catherians were somehow composed of genetic material from different worlds. When Park brought these concerns to the world leaders, she was politely told that such questions were not diplomatic. The Catherians had brought nothing but benefits to humanity, and questioning their motives would be both ungrateful and potentially dangerous. The aliens had given them paradise. Paradise was not something to be questioned, but Park continued to watch and wonder. Maintaining her vigilance even as the world celebrated its golden age, the first refugee ship appeared on the edge of Earth's solar system on a cold morning in March. It was nothing like the elegant Catherian vessels that had become a familiar sight in Earth's skies. The ship was ugly, scarred by battle, held together with makeshift repairs and desperation. Admiral Park received the alert at 0400 hours and was immediately suspicious. No human ship was scheduled to return from the outer colonies, and the vessel's design was completely unknown. The ship's occupants sent a simple message in broken English: "Help us. They are coming. The Catherians lie." Park ordered the ship quarantined in the outer system, while her teams tried to understand what they were dealing with. The beings aboard called themselves the Zilani, and they looked like humans might look if they had evolved underwater. Their skin was pale blue-green, their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with a fluid grace that reminded Park uncomfortably of the Catherians themselves. Dr. Hyjin Kim, now the head of Earth's Xenobiology Department, was brought in to communicate with the refugees. The Zilani spoke in a language that seemed to flow like water, but their universal translator devices allowed for basic communication. What they told her made her blood run cold. "Catherians came to our world 50 years ago," the Zilani leader, whose name sounded like Murthia, explained through the translator. "They brought gifts just like they did here. Medicine that healed our sick, technology that ended our energy. Problems, promises of a place in their galactic confederation." Kim felt her hands trembling as she recorded the conversation. The pattern was exactly what had happened on Earth, down to the smallest details. The Catherians had approached the Zilani with the same gentle words, the same generous offers, the same patient teaching. "For 20 years, our world prospered," Murthia continued. "Our people lived longer, healthier lives. Our children learned Catherian philosophy alongside our own traditions. But then things began to change. Our leaders started making decisions that favored the Catherians over our own people. Laws were passed that required certain medical treatments. For all citizens, those who refused were labeled as dangerous to society." The Zilani showed Kim recordings they had managed to save from their homeworld. The images were disturbing beyond description. Zilani citizens lined up for what they thought were routine medical procedures. But the treatments were different from the healing medicine the Catherians had originally provided. People who received these new treatments came out changed. Their behavior altered, their loyalty shifted completely to the Catherians. "They called it the convergence," Murthia said, her large eyes filled with an ancient sadness. "They said it was evolution, that we were becoming something greater than what we had been. But we were losing ourselves, becoming part of something else entirely." The most shocking revelation came when the Zilani showed Kim their genetic analysis. Of the Catherians, alien DNA contained traces of at least 20 different species, including what appeared to be Zilani genetic markers. Catherians were not a single species that had evolved naturally. They were a collective, a growing mass of absorbed civilizations that had been integrated into a single, expanding organism. Each world they visit follows the same pattern, Murthia explained. First contact, gifts, integration, and then the harvest. They take the best of each species, our biology, our culture, our knowledge, and add it to themselves. The original species ceases to exist as a separate entity. Kim immediately brought this information to Admiral Park, who had been quietly conducting her own investigation into the Catherian enclaves. Park's teams had been using advanced scanning equipment to monitor the alien settlements. What they found confirmed the Zilani's warnings. The scans revealed that humans living near Zilani's were beginning to show biological changes. Their DNA was being gradually modified, their brain chemistry altered in subtle ways. The medical treatments that had made them healthier and younger were also preparing them for something else. Currently, Dr. Minho Lee was brought into the secret investigation, despite his close work with the Catherians. When he saw the evidence, his face went pale. The regeneration treatments, the adriversal medicine, the genetic therapies that had seemed like miracles, they were all part of a preparation process. The medical scanners in every hospital, Lee said quietly, his voice shaking, are not just monitoring health, they're mapping our entire genetic structure, cataloging our biological traits. Every treatment we've received has been designed to make us more compatible with their collective. The investigation revealed that the process had already begun in earnest. Humans who had received the most advanced medical treatments were showing signs of neural integration. Their thoughts were becoming synchronized with Catherian patterns. Their individual personalities were slowly being subsumed into something larger. Park realized that Earth had perhaps months before the harvest began in earnest. The Catherians had been patient, building trust and dependency over 15 years. But now they were ready to complete their conquest. Humanity faced a choice: become part of the Catherian convergence willingly, or resist and face the same fate as countless other worlds. The Golden Age was over. The real war for humanity's survival was about to begin. The world split apart like a cracked mirror when Admiral Park tried to reveal the truth about the Catherians. She stood before the United Nations Emergency Council, presenting the evidence from the Zilani refugees and her own investigations. The room was filled with world leaders, many of whom had Catherian advisors standing silently behind their chairs. The medical treatments are not healing us, Park said, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. They are preparing us for absorption into their collective. Every scan, every injection, every miracle cure has been designed to make us compatible with their biology. The response was immediate and devastating. The Secretary General, a woman who had been one of the first to receive advanced Catherian life extension treatments, stood up with a sad smile. Admiral Park, your service to humanity has been exemplary. But these accusations are clearly the result of stress and paranoia. The Catherians have given us paradise. Half the room erupted in support of Park, while the other half denounced her as a dangerous extremist. The Catherian Council, which had been quietly integrated into every major government over the past 15 years, issued a statement declaring the refugees to be hostile aliens attempting to destroy the peaceful relationship between humans and Kytherians. Dr. Minho Lee watched the broadcast from his laboratory, his heart sinking as he saw humanity tear itself apart. The people who had received the most advanced medical treatments were completely unable to believe that their saviors could be predators. They had been subtly conditioned over the years, their brain chemistry altered to make them more trusting, more compliant. We have to choose a side, Dr. So-Young Choi said quietly as she joined Lee at the window. Outside, protests had erupted in the streets. Pro-Catherian demonstrators clashed with groups demanding that the aliens leave Earth immediately. The evidence is clear. They're not here to help us, Lee nodded grimly. Both he and Choi had been working closely with the Catherians for years, but they had been careful to limit their exposure to the more advanced treatments. They could still think clearly, still see the truth that was hidden from so many others. Within days, a secret network began forming. Admiral Park used her military connections to identify personnel who had not been significantly exposed to Etherian treatments. Dr. Lee and Dr. Choi began developing countermeasures, using their knowledge of alien biology to create weapons and defenses. The resistance had to work in complete secrecy, as the Catharian Council now had access to most government communications. Captain Dong-Haeon, Yoon had been serving on the Mars colony when the revelations broke. He returned to Earth immediately, bringing with him a team of soldiers who had been far from Catharian influence. Yoon was a practical man, trained in special operations, and he understood that they were now fighting a war unlike any in human history. The enemy looks like our friends, Yoon explained to his team as they prepared for their first mission. They have human allies who genuinely believe they are doing the right thing. We have to be careful not to harm innocent people who have simply been manipulated. The resistance established hidden facilities in remote locations around the world. Old military bunkers, abandoned mines, and isolated research stations became staging grounds for the fight to save humanity. They reverse-engineered Catharian technology, creating weapons that could disrupt the aliens' energy shields and communication systems. Dr. Choi made the most difficult decision of her life when she chose to sacrifice her career and reputation to join the resistance. She had spent years building relationships with Catharian scientists, learning their advanced biological techniques. Now she used that knowledge to develop countermeasures against their conversion process. The neural implants they use for the final stage of conversion have a weakness, she explained to the resistance leadership. They rely on specific brainwave patterns that can be disrupted by electromagnetic pulses. If we can get close enough, we can reverse the process in the early stages. The first major operation came when Yoon's team discovered a Catharian facility disguised as a medical research center. Intelligence suggested that dozens of humans were being held there in the early stages of conversion. The raid had to be swift and silent, as any alarm would bring both alien reinforcements and human security forces. Yoon led his team through the facility's underground levels, using Dr. Choi's biological countermeasures to disrupt the conversion chambers. They found humans floating in strange glowing pools, their bodies connected to alien devices that were slowly rewriting their genetic structure. Many were too far gone to save, but they managed to rescue 37 people who could still be returned to normal. The rescued humans told horrifying stories of the conversion process. They described feeling their individual thoughts being absorbed into something larger, their memories becoming part of a vast collective consciousness. They spoke of losing themselves bit by bit, until only a shell remained that served the Catharian. Convergence. The resistance faced enemies on multiple fronts. The Catharians themselves were powerful beyond imagination, with technology that could level cities and weapons that defied human understanding. But perhaps more dangerous were the human collaborators who genuinely believed that joining the convergence was humanity's destiny. These collaborators were not evil people, were doctors, teachers, politicians, and ordinary citizens who had been gradually conditioned to see the absorption process as evolution rather than extinction. They fought against the resistance with the passion of true believers, making the conflict a civil war as much as an alien invasion. The battle for humanity's future had begun, and the outcome remained terrifyingly uncertain. The war that followed was unlike anything in human history. For 3 years, Earth burned under the weight of a conflict that pitted humanity against both alien invaders and their own transformed neighbors. The Catharians, no longer hiding their true nature, unleashed weapons that could turn entire cities into glass craters and deployed technologies that seemed to bend reality itself. Admiral Park stood in the ruins of what had once been Tokyo, watching the smoke rise from the latest Catharian assault. Her hair had gone completely gray during the war, and deep scars ran across her face from a plasma weapon that had nearly killed her 6 months earlier. At 67, she looked far older than her years. The alien medical treatments that had once kept her young, now nothing but a distant memory. "The sole defense line is holding," Captain Yoon reported, his voice crackling through the damaged communication system. But they're bringing up more conversion ships. If we don't stop them, soon we'll lose another 1,000,000 people to the convergence. Park nodded grimly. The conversion ships were the Catherians' most terrifying weapon. They would hover over populated areas and use massive absorption beams to transform entire city blocks at once. Humans caught in the beams would emerge as hybrid beings, their minds connected to the Catherian collective, their bodies altered to serve the alien purposes. But humanity had learned to fight back. Dr. Hyjin Kim, now leading the Resistance's biological warfare division, had developed weapons that could disrupt the Catherian absorption process. Her laboratories hidden in underground bunkers worked around the clock to create viruses that could attack the alien collective consciousness. If we can get them into the mothership's central processing core, can sever the connection between the Catherians and their absorbed species, it might force them to retreat. The plan was desperate and dangerous. The Catherian mothership hung in orbit above Earth like a dark moon, protected by energy shields that had withstood every weapon humanity could throw at it. But Captain Yoon had discovered a weakness in their defenses, a small gap that opened for just seconds when the ship was absorbing new victims. "We'll have one chance," Yoon explained to his strike team. "The transport window lasts for exactly 4 seconds. If we miss it, we're dead, and Earth falls to the convergence." The strike force assembled in the remains of the Geneva spaceport, one of the few launch facilities still operational. Park insisted on leading the mission herself, despite the protests of her officers. She was the highest-ranking military officer left alive, and she felt responsible for the millions who had already died. Dr. Kim's biological weapons were loaded into specially designed containers that could survive the journey to the mothership's core. The weapons were based on Earth's own immune system, viruses that would attack the Catherian collective consciousness, like antibodies fighting an infection. The final assault began at dawn. Human fighters cobbled together from salvaged alien technology and Earth's remaining military resources engaged the Catherian defense fleet in a battle that lit up the sky. The noise was deafening, a constant roar of explosions and energy weapons that could be heard for hundreds of miles. Park's strike team waited for their moment as the battle raged around them. The mothership's absorption beam activated, reaching down toward the ruins of London to harvest the survivors hiding in the underground tunnels. For 4 seconds, the ship's shields flickered as it focused its energy on the absorption process. "Now," Park shouted. Their transport ship dove through the gap in the shields. The interior of the mothership was a nightmare of organic machinery and twisted corridors that seemed to pulse with alien life. Park's team fought their way through hybrid defenders, humans who had been so completely absorbed that they no longer remembered their original identities. Every step forward cost them lives. But they pressed on toward the central core. Captain Yoon's tactical genius kept them alive as they navigated the alien ship's impossible architecture. He used guerrilla tactics learned from 3 years of desperate warfare, striking fast and moving before the enemy could respond. His soldiers followed him with the dedication of people who knew they were fighting for the survival of their species. The central core was a massive chamber filled with floating biomechanical structures that processed the consciousness of millions of absorbed beings. Park could hear voices in her mind, the thoughts of humans who had been consumed by the collective. Begging for release from their eternal prison, Dr. Kim's weapons were deployed into the core's main processing units. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Catherian collective consciousness began to collapse as the biological viruses attacked the neural connections that held it together. Screams echoed through the ship as the absorbed beings were suddenly freed from their mental prison. The mothership began to tear itself apart as the convergence collapsed. Park's team barely escaped as the massive vessel exploded in orbit, sending debris streaming across the sky like falling stars. Similar explosions occurred around the world as other Catherian ships lost their connection to the HFY collective. The surviving aliens fled toward the stars, their great conquest broken by humanity's refusal to surrender. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Earth's population had been reduced by half. Entire cities lay in ruins. and the survivors faced a future without the technology that had made their world a paradise. Park stood in the ruins of Geneva, watching the last Catharian ships disappear into the darkness of space. The war was over, but humanity had learned a lesson written in blood and fire. Kindness from strangers might be the most dangerous gift of all.